David Kessler was a tough, no-nonsense Air Force medic turned science teacher, grounded in logic, trained to save lives, and never one to believe in the supernatural. But one ordinary day in 2007, a mysterious illness struck, and within hours, he was clinically dead. What happened next defied everything he thought he knew. As doctors fought to revive him, David's soul left his body and entered a realm so real, so powerful, it changed him forever.
My name is David Kessler. I'm 52 years old, and I live in Boise, Idaho. I work as a high school science teacher now, but before that, I served for nearly 2 decades as a medic in the U.S. Air Force. My background is very practical. I was trained to respond to emergencies, follow protocol, and deal with facts. I've always been someone who believes in logic, biology, chemistry, things that can be measured and proven. That's what made what happened to me so hard to explain. Since I was a kid, I had a quiet curiosity about the unknown. Things like life after death, dreams, and spiritual stuff always caught my attention. But I never had any experiences like that myself. I stayed focused on what was in front of me: my job, my family, my responsibilities. I believed in God, but I didn't go looking for signs or visions. You could say I kept my feet on the ground. What I'm about to share happened in 2007. I was still teaching full-time and had been feeling a bit run down, but nothing serious. At least that's what I thought. I never expected that a normal day would turn into something that would change how I saw everything. After it happened, I didn't talk about it for years. I didn't know how. I didn't want people to think I'd lost my mind or was making things up. But over time, I realized this story wasn't something to hide. It was something to share. Not because I'm special, but because what I saw might help someone else. So now, after all these years, I'm ready to tell the truth about what happened when I died. At least for a little while. Started like any other school day. I was in my classroom, finishing up a lesson on the circulatory system, when one of my students raised their hand. A boy in the back had a nosebleed. Nothing major, just one of those random ones that happen sometimes. I grabbed a tissue box, helped him tilt his head forward, and handed him a cold pack. As I stood there, I noticed something strange. His skin was clammy, and his eyes looked a little dazed. I brushed it off, assuming it was just the heat or maybe stress. 2 days later, I woke up feeling awful. My head was pounding, my body ached, and I had chills. At first, I thought it was just the flu, but it got worse fast. Within hours, I was throwing up, burning with fever, and struggling to stay awake. I called in sick and tried to ride it out at home, but by the 3rd day, I couldn't stand up without feeling like I was going to pass out. I remember looking at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My face was pale, my eyes sunken. I looked like someone who had already given up. My wife found me collapsed in the hallway and called 911. I barely remember the ride to the hospital, but I do remember the bright lights and the flurry of hands hooking me up to machines. They pumped fluids into me, ran tests, and gave me antibiotics. At some point, they gave me a strong pain medication, morphine, I think. I had no pain, but they said it would help me relax while they treated the infection. That's when things went wrong. My body didn't respond well. My blood pressure dropped fast, and my heart slowed. Alarms went off. Nurses shouted. Doctors rushed in. Then everything just stopped. I flatlined. For a few seconds, or maybe longer, I was gone. Clinically dead. No pulse, no breath, no signs of life. They did everything they could to bring me back. My wife later told me they almost called it. But something made them keep going. They didn't know it then, but while they were fighting to save me, I had already gone somewhere else. The moment I left my body, I didn't even realize it had happened. 1 second I was in the hospital bed, drifting in and out of sleep, and the next I was somewhere else entirely. There was no pain. No panique. Just a sudden release, like someone had quietly opened a locked door and let me walk through it. It felt like I had slipped out of a suit that had always been too tight. My body, heavy, sick, and full of noise, was gone. What was left of me felt light, clear, and alive in a way I didn't even know was possible. There was no more noise from the machines, no beeping, no voices, just a calm, deep silence. A silence that somehow felt full. Then I realized I could see everything. The hospital room was below me. I was floating gently, a few feet above the bed. I saw my body, lifeless and pale, lying still while nurses moved quickly around it. One of the doctors was pressing on my chest. Another was checking the monitors. I felt no fear watching them.
No sadness.
Only curiosity and a quiet sense of wonder, like I was watching someone else's life from a distance. I began to drift upward, slowly at first, then a bit faster. The hospital faded, and I was surrounded by a soft light. It wasn't blinding. It was warm and glowing, like sunrise after a long, cold night. I felt as if I was being pulled by something, not forced, but invited. Felt familiar, like returning to a place I had always known but forgotten. There were colors I'd never seen before, but somehow understood. The space around me was alive, not crowded but full of energy, full of peace. I remember thinking, this feels more real than anything I've ever felt, more real than the earth under my feet, more real than the people I loved. Everything was so clear, so right. In that moment, I knew I had crossed a line. I was no longer in the world I came from. I had stepped into something far bigger and far more beautiful. As I drifted farther from the hospital and into the light, I found myself in a place that words can barely describe. It wasn't a hallway or a tunnel. It was more like a vast open space, stretching in every direction, but not empty. It was filled with these orbs, floating, glowing beings made of light and energy. They weren't just lights. Each one had presence, personality. I could feel them. Some felt joyful and playful. Others felt wise and still. But all of them shared the same warmth, like being wrapped in a love so complete. It left no room for fear or doubt. Just being near them made something inside me feel whole, like I had been cracked open and was now being filled with peace. There were no words between us, but I could sense what they were saying. Thoughts moved instantly. Emotions were felt like music. It was all frequency, like tuning into a perfect signal where nothing was hidden and everything was understood. I didn't speak, but I was known, completely, and I knew them, too, in some deep, ancient way that didn't need explanation. One orb in particular came close to me. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, and I felt waves of comfort and joy. Not just mine, its joy. It was happy I had arrived. I understood, without words, that this place was not foreign. I had been here before, maybe long ago, maybe always. As I floated among them, I began to feel my old life slipping away, not like forgetting, but like remembering something bigger. I realized that David Kessler, the man, the teacher, the husband, was only a small part of who I really was, like a costume I had worn for a short time. Here, in this realm, I wasn't bound by a name or a body or a story. I was just me, fully me, expanded and free. There was no pressure, no roles to play, no fear of what others thought, only the pure, bright truth of being. And that truth was love. Everything in that place was made of it. Everything ran on it. And for the first time in my life, I understood it without needing to explain it. As I moved deeper into that realm, the orbs slowly drifted away, and in their place, 3 small figures began to appear. They looked like glowing children, but not in a human sense. They had no clear faces, just soft outlines, like cloaks made of light, and a kind of shimmer around them that changed with every movement. Their presence made me feel instantly safe, like I was meeting old friends I had somehow forgotten. They didn't speak with words, but I could feel their thoughts. Quick, playful, and full of laughter. One of them danced in a circle around me, while another reached out and gently tapped my shoulder with a spark of light. The third just stood there, grinning, if it's even fair to call it a grin. I couldn't see a mouth, but I felt joy pouring out of them, wrapping around me like a warm breeze. It was strange, but at the same time it felt completely natural. They weren't strangers. They felt like soul siblings, beings I had known forever. I laughed out loud without meaning to. Not a nervous laugh, but one from deep in my chest. The kind that only comes when you feel completely free. They laughed too, or maybe they sang. It was hard to tell the difference in that place. Everything felt like music, light, and love all blended together. Then the light changed. A calm presence moved toward us, and everything else slowed down. The three small beings stepped aside, still glowing with happiness, as a much taller figure approached. This being didn't walk. It flowed, like a breeze you could see or a flame that moved with purpose. Its form kept shifting, like it was made of mist and fire at the same time. When it got close, I felt something inside me expand. My chest felt full. My throat tightened with emotion. I couldn't speak. I didn't need to. This being didn't just love me, it was love. It radiated something deeper than anything I've ever felt on earth. Not love because I earned it, not love because I did anything right, but love because I existed. And in that moment, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be. After a few moments with the tall being, I sensed it was time for something different. I didn't hear the words, but I just knew. We were going to look back at my life, not in a heavy, dramatic way. More like flipping through a photo album with someone who knew every story behind every picture. Scenes started to play around me, not on a screen, but more like memories unfolding in the air. There I was as a kid, helping my sister tie her shoes on the first day of school. There I was, losing my temper during a stressful day at work. Then again, holding my father's hand at his hospital bedside. The good, the bad, the forgotten, they were all there. But what surprised me most was the feeling that came with each moment. There was no voice saying, "You failed here," or "You did great there." Instead, I felt what others had felt because of my choices. A kind word I said once made someone's day. A harsh word I didn't even remember had left a scar. It wasn't punishment. It was understanding. At one point, I chuckled watching myself fumble through an awkward first date in college. The tall being seemed to laugh too. Not in a mean way, but with warmth, like a parent watching their child learn. What became clear was this. It was never about the big accomplishments. Not the medals from the Air Force, not the job promotions, not even the degrees. The things that mattered most were the simple acts, small choices made with love. The being finally said, without speaking, "It's not about success. It's about love and intention." And in that moment, it all made sense. After the life reflection, I felt a shift again. The tall being stood close and somehow pulled back a layer of everything I thought I knew. I didn't see Earth from space or anything dramatic like that, but I felt the truth of our world in a new way, like someone had pulled back the curtain on a stage play. Earth, the being showed me, is dense, heavy with emotion, time, and distraction. It's a place where souls come to learn. We choose to forget who we really are so we can grow through experience. Pain, confusion, even fear, they're not punishments. They're part of the training. Earth is like a school, a tough one, but everything that happens there has meaning, even when we can't see it. I was shown how time doesn't really work the way we think. It stretches and bends. The past, present, and future are more like layers happening all at once. And all around us, unseen, are other layers, other dimensions, full of life and energy. They're not far away. They're right here, just vibrating on a different frequency. I remember asking, why do we feel so alone down there? The answer came instantly, not as a sentence, but as a knowing. You're never alone. Not for a second. You just forget, because remembering too soon would change the lesson. It hit me hard. All those nights I thought no one understood me, all those quiet prayers I thought were lost, they were never ignored. I just couldn't hear the answers yet. The being let me feel the connection between people, between realms, between the soul and its source. And I understood something I never did before. Life on Earth isn't about control or perfection. It's about learning how to love, even in the dark. When I realized what this place was, home, I didn't want to leave. I felt complete, free. I had never known a peace like this, not even close. So when the tall being looked at me with those soft, glowing eyes and said, "It's time to go back," I resisted. "Please," I said, though I never moved my lips. "I'm done there. I've lived. I've served. I've loved. Let me stay." The being didn't argue. It just looked at me with the deepest kindness. like a parent watching their child plead. Then came the reply, "You have more to do." I didn't like that answer, but before I could speak again, the realm around me started to shift. The light dimmed, the warmth pulled back. The beings faded like mist in the morning sun. I was being pulled downward. As I descended, I passed through a space that chilled me to my core. It was nothing like the realm I had just left. It was dark, not pitch black, but empty. Lonely. I felt completely cut off, like love couldn't reach that place. It was a place of forgetting, of confusion.
No laughter.
No light, just this heavy feeling of despair. I knew right away. This place was close to Earth. So close, in fact, that I realized many people dip into it without knowing. Depression, deep anger, hopelessness. They all grow here. It's not hell, but it's a warning, a reminder of what happens when we disconnect. From love, from each other, from truth. Then, just as suddenly, I dropped back into my body. My chest was tight, my limbs were heavy, and everything felt distant and dull compared to where I'd been. I was back, but I wasn't the same. I woke up in the ICU, barely able to move. My body felt like it had been through a storm, heavy, weak, and aching in places I didn't understand. A nurse noticed my eyes opening and rushed over. "You're awake," she whispered, like she couldn't believe it. Later, a doctor came in and told me I had flatlined. "We honestly didn't think you were coming back," he said. "But here you are." Everyone around me looked relieved, even amazed. But inside, I wasn't celebrating. I felt sad. Not just tired or sick, truly sad. Like something beautiful had been taken away. For the first few days, I barely spoke. I didn't know how to explain what I'd seen. I kept thinking about that place. The light, the beings, the love, and wondered how I could ever live in this world again after knowing what was waiting beyond it. To keep from losing it completely, I started writing. Not to share with anyone, just to remember. Every detail I could recall, I scribbled into a notebook from the hospital gift shop. Writing became my lifeline. It helped me hold onto the truth I had seen, even as the noise of this world slowly tried to make me forget. It's been years since that day, but not a single one has gone by without me thinking about it. That experience didn't just change how I see death. It changed how I live. I'm not the same man I was before. I don't rush through life anymore. I listen more. I slow down. I try to see people, really see them, even when they're hurting or acting out. I used to carry a lot of stress, a lot of control. Now I carry peace, because I know where we're all heading. I became softer, more patient. I forgive more quickly. I don't cling to grudges like I used to. Things that once felt like a big deal, they just don't anymore. I feel people's energy now. I can often sense what someone's going through before they even say a word. I used to think that kind of thing was just nonsense. But now I know better. What I feel most called to do is help others, especially those who are grieving. I've sat with parents who lost children, people who lost their partners, and friends who feel like life has lost all meaning. I never tell them I know exactly what they're going through. But I tell them this: they're not gone. Not really. They're closer than you think. Because death isn't the end. It's the beginning of who we really are. This life is important, yes, but it's not all there is. We're more than these bodies. More than our mistakes. More than what the world says we are. We're souls, and we're loved beyond anything we can understand. So if you're afraid, don't be. If you've lost someone, talk to them. They're listening. If you're tired, hold on. You're not alone. Not for a second. The place I went, it wasn't a dream. It wasn't a trick of the brain. It was real. More real than here. And when your time comes, you'll see it too. You'll remember. And you'll wonder how you ever forgot. Until then, love deeply. Be kind. And remember, you are never, ever alone.